Hi, I'm Sherry Mullane, and this is my TED Talks video. For this assignment, I had never heard of TED Talks, which shocked my brother and sister-in-law, who both obviously had, I suppose. There are over 1,800 videos, according to the website, to stir your curiosity. So picking 3 to watch proved to be a bit of a challenge, or just 3 specifically to do the speech on, rather. I gave myself some criteria to look at in order to pick my speeches. The first one was that I wanted the title of it to draw me in. I wanted it to be interesting, and I wanted it to be relevant to what I plan on studying the rest of my life. Figured that was a good starting point. And in keeping with the instructions on the assignment, I also wanted to make sure that the person didn't look like me. You know, it said different races, ethnicities, genders, and I looked for that when I was picking my speeches. So here we go. The first speech I picked was from Wendy Chung. It was filmed in March 2014, called Autism: What We Know and What We Don't Know Yet. Because autism is, the studying on it is ever changing. And Wendy immediately connected with her audience. She looked at them all in the eye. She asked, why? Why is there a spike in autism diagnosis? Why is autism a thing? What causes it? She used a lot of hand motions while she spoke. I think it helped her get her point across. It could have helped her expend some nervous energy as well. I'm doing a lot of hand motions below the screen here myself right now. She also used a lot of facts, and I think that helps when you're talking about something so scientific like that. For example, 1 in 88 children are going to be diagnosed with autism. It's a huge number, so it's something that warrants a lot of study. She also used a lot of graphics in her speech to help illustrate the facts, to get her points across. She used one graphic, for example, towards the beginning of her speech that illustrated the fact that since the Americans with Disabilities Act was enacted, the amount of cases diagnosed on the autism spectrum disorder has dramatically increased. And she posed the question whether that was a direct correlation there. How were they diagnosing the autism? What criteria were they looking for in diagnosing it? And I think that both of those things really helped her get her point across to the entire audience. She was incredibly emphatic in everything she said. She was very sure of herself, and she also really tried to connect with the audience on a personal level. She looked at them straight in the eye, and she truly seemed like she wanted to give them answers. So I genuinely enjoyed looking at her speech, listening to her speech. That was a good one for me. The second speech I watched, I did not find as pleasing. It was by a gentleman named David Brox. Should you live for your resume or for your eulogy? And I found that interesting because I'm always trying to figure out what else to do with myself. I want to live in the present. So I figured I'd see what this gentleman had to say on this subject. It was filmed in April 2014, so another fairly recent speech. But despite the interesting premise of it, I did not find his speech very entertaining. It wasn't incredibly informative. He looked at his notes an awful lot. He kept referring to them, and he'd glance up a little bit, but he'd just keep referring to his notes. And he used the same tone, the same cadence throughout the entire speech, and honestly, that made me kind of want to fall asleep. And it looked like his audience wanted to fall asleep. They did not seem very interested in it. He also didn't use a lot of original thoughts, I think. He seemed to just read off quotations or anecdotes from other people, again, from his notes. He didn't have anything original to bring to the subject, I think. That one didn't please me as much, so I looked harder for my third speech. I went all the way to the back, to the very first speeches, and I searched through a couple years of speeches before I found the next one that I wanted to talk about here. And that was by Stephen Hawking, called Questioning the Universe, filmed in February 2008. I picked that one because well, it was Stephen Hawking. And I wanted to see how he would get his speech across, because I know that he uses that machine to talk with. I actually work with students who use similar machines. So I just wanted to see how he would get an entire speech out of that. He was brilliant, of course. They showed shots of his machine talker thing, and he had prepared that speech in advance. It was just reading it off. And for him to do that had to have taken, I can't even imagine how long. Because at one point in the speech, there was another gentleman there, and he asked Mr. Hawking a question. It took him 7 minutes to form the answer to one question, never mind an entire speech. So that fascinated me to no end. But he started his speech by posing a lot of questions, which I found to be in keeping with the title of his speech of Questioning the Universe. He presented a lot of scientific facts. He was backing up everything that he was saying, and I found that incredibly important and found it incredibly interesting. It was a pre-taped, or not pre-taped, but they had him on a camera. He wasn't directly there giving the speech. It was via satellite. He was in front of a giant chalkboard or whiteboard, and it had a lot of what I believe to be physics equations behind it. Didn't understand a darn thing on it, and it wasn't brought up, but I found that to be interesting, because it did give him a background. Obviously, Stephen Hawking is a physicist, so I just found that to be an interesting part of the speech. He did allow that some science is conjecture, which I found to be a good thing, because, it is. Some of it's not proven fact, and that made his speech more relatable to the audience, in my opinion. The camera angle tried to show different expressions, and he did try, I believe, as much as he can to look like he was into the speech. He did make jokes in what he was saying, which I thought was funny. He said something about aliens. He was trying to keep everything on a light note. He was trying to keep the audience drawn in. And he did end everything on a hopeful note. So I found that certainly be rather important. Sorry, I just noticed that my lighting was a little weird, and it still kind of is. But hopefully it wasn't that way most of the time, and hopefully you guys will end up looking at the speeches. I'm going to go back certainly and look at quite a few more. And that is everything that I have to say. Hope this wasn't too long, and like I said, I hope you all go back and look at least 2 of the speeches that I spoke about, and have a wonderful day.